Good morning. Uh, and I hope you all had a restful summer. It's amazing to see how quickly it went by. And we're looking at next week, starting for classes. So AI is the topic of the conversation, right? So it's quite fascinating to me. And I asked Emily in terms of how many have joined on Zoom. And she told me there are about 30, which to me is surprising, right? It's just giving around the clock. But it also kind of dawned on me, they real or are they AI generated? You never know, right? So as we get immersed in this AI phenomenon, right? So to me, it's really a phenomenon. You'll notice that there are three emerging approaches to AI, right? That at least that I have observed. So one approach is you have folks saying, wow, we are excited. I'm excited about this. I am using AI for every aspect of my life, work-related, personal life, right? They're super excited about this. So I have a brother who's in that group, that extreme. He had a paid version of ChatGPT about a year and a half ago. I mean, that's how immersed he is in that. On the other spectrum, you have folks who don't want to have anything to do with AI, don't want to hear anything about AI. My wife was on that extreme. And then you also have those who are sort of in the middle, right? And I'm one of those. There's aspect of AI that excites me. There's also another aspect of AI. I'm nervous, to be honest with you, right? So these are, in my view, there are three different groups, and depending on, which group you are, you're either in the middle, or on the extreme, or on the other spectrum. And I was sort of intrigued, thinking about this phenomenon in the context of history, right? Going back over the last like 50 years, right? So what are the key technological inventions that have really been disruptive in terms of higher education, the way in which we approach our jobs as educators, right? So as I think about that, there are three things that came to mind, right? There are many others, but three key things, at least in my view, that came to mind. One was the invention of a scientific calculator. Right. And the second one was internet, back in when it started being used widely, right? Back in the mid-90s, sort of late 90s. And then the third one that's really connected to that is search engines like Google, right? Which came about around 98, 99, 2000. And then I started researching, and I'm like, what were some of the key concerns that people had back then and that still linger to this day when these technological solutions that are so disruptive came about? So scientific calculators, right? Some of the key concerns was over-reliance. Again, so I'm looking at it from an educator perspective. Over-reliance. Concerns that students would become overly dependent on calculating. Cheating. Immediate access to answers without necessarily understanding the concepts. Which then leads to reduced effort, right? These concerns still linger on today, but that hasn't really stopped us from using scientific calculators in our classrooms. That's real. Not just in the classroom, though, but in all aspects of the way we do business here. I can't imagine the business services department, right, going about their day-to-day work without having to use a calculator. The second one that I talked about is internet, right? So what were some of the key concerns when internet started to become widely used? One was government surveillance. That's still the case today, right? People are very concerned. They got Uncle Thomas monitoring our activities, right? Data breaching, concerns about security, our own security of personal information. Digital divide, right? That some folks are going to have access and some are not going to be able to have access depending on their income and their backgrounds. Impact on children, right? Having access to inappropriate content. Economic disruption, right? Invention of internet leading to job loss. Again, each one of these concerns we still grapple with today. They have not gone away. But that has not really stopped us from utilizing the internet. It's aspect of our being now. I cannot imagine any of us going about our day-to-day work without having to use it. Now, connected to that is a search engine like Google, right? What were some of the key concerns that people had back then? Back in the early 2000s, late 90s, right? Algorithm bias. Certain results when you do a Google search would be prioritized over others, right? And make that connection with AI, right? Still a concern today. Privacy concerns, right? Personal data, again, surveillance that Google would store all your search information. Quality of the results and how you utilize them. Still the fact today, still a concern. But again, as a student myself, I could not imagine going through a doctoral program without having to use Google Scholar. To my research. That has not, these concerns have not stopped us from utilizing Google. Despite the concerns, we still continue to embrace and continue to utilize. So the conversation we're having today is critical and timely. And as educators, like we're all educators, right? We need to be able to really have this conversation and really interrogate different aspects of AI. So I really, really appreciate particularly the academic senate for establishing a task force, right? There is in the task force a group that came together as still continues to really focus on this thing, AI. How are we going to approach it? So I appreciate the leadership in that and taking that proactive approach. And again, AI is going to impact how we teach, not just how we teach in the classroom setting, but those of us in student services, it's going to impact the way in which we serve students. It's just the reality. So again, this is a great conversation that you're about to have, and thank you. It's time to appreciate it. Next, I get to introduce my boss.
Yeah, dude.
As Tadeo was talking about, first of all, good morning.
Good morning.
It's good to be here with you for many different reasons. Sitting back reminiscing as Tadeo was talking about technology disruption in higher ed. I remember 1990, freshman year at UC Riverside, about to enroll in shout out to the Highlanders. Take freshman comp English 1A. And it was a brand new type of English class. It's the first one they ever offered that you could take in a computer lab. It was Macintosh computers. I think we spent majority of the quarter trying to figure out the technology, then on writing, and maybe that explains some things. But yeah, so I just reminisce. That's an underused phrase in leadership, and I know why is not said often, but I think it's more appropriate to respond in this way in comparison to the amount of times it's actually used. And that phrase is, I don't know. When we look at AI, I can honestly say, I don't know if AI is going to save the world or destroy the world. I don't know in terms of what type of disruption AI is going to create in the higher ed space. Is it going to complement or is it going to replace higher ed? I don't know what the future holds as it relates to AI. But there's certain things that I do know. I do know that within institutions like these, in our institution in particular, that we have the innovation, we have the culture, we have the expertise, and we have the mindset to begin to figure out how can we define it for ourselves, and how can we utilize this as an effective tool to help forward our goals and outcomes as an institution, but most importantly, how can we use this if there's an opportunity to improve outcomes for our students and to be able to amplify their learning experience, and is there a way to support the teaching that you do on a day-to-day basis? And I'm just so appreciative that we're building community, that we're having conversation, that we're delving into this important topic. I mean, we hear threats around higher education all the time, and very few actually ever materialize. When you look at the top corporations from 100 years ago, that many of those corporations are no longer in business. When you look at the top higher ed institutions from 100 years ago, almost all of them are still the top universities in the countries. So higher ed is extremely resistant and resilient over a period of time. How we operate change, what we emphasize, what we put a curricular emphasis on, how we teach, that has evolved over time. So I don't think AI is necessarily going to replace our institution, but it's definitely going to be something that's going to cause us to evolve and to grow and to push us. But I also know that we need to be on the forefront. I think the biggest threat to us as an institution is not going backwards. It is actually standing still. It's us being stagnant. And so as institutions begin to think about how they can utilize AI to serve students, to amplify teaching, to support learning, I know this is not something that we can afford to sit out, that we cannot be responsive. And oftentimes higher education is the last entity to respond. We're slow to move, we're not particularly agile. And I think we need to take those lessons learned historically to see how we could be a little bit more at the forefront of this conversation and this work, so we won't get left behind. But most importantly, for our students not to be left behind in this newest technology and innovation, which particularly happens to communities who are impoverished, communities that don't have a legacy of going to college, who don't have access. And those are the populations and the students that we serve. And I think we have a responsibility and of course a vested interest to make sure that the communities that we serve is not left behind in this way as they have been in so many other technological developments that we have seen happen historically. So I'm excited to hear the conversation. Let's give an advanced hand class to our experts. I'm calling you our experts.
After Dr. Bush, I don't know. What's the agenda there? But hey, good morning, everybody. Welcome to the AI party. My name is Rochelle Perez, a librarian. Been here at CSC for quite a while. But then we are so happy to have this conversation going. We've been doing this session. I've been doing this session since last semester. And so some of them will be, I think I am asked to do the basics. So many work has been done with AI, especially documenting resources, and I will take you there. But first of all, let me tell you that the presenters goal for this workshop is simple. Okay, just like what Tanika had said, we are just here to share what we know, to share what we've done in our practice. And our hope for the audience, for you guys, is we're hoping that after this session, that you will be at least try at least a new AI tool, right? And be able to share it with a colleague here at CRC, or be able to share it with the CRC community later on. So there's a lot of developments going on at AI. How do you keep up with the technology that's like on a daily basis? There's something, a technology is happening. But then, so that's our goal. So we will be happy with that. You know, whether our hopes will happen, but then, you know, if you just transfer the knowledge or experience that you learn, we're happy with that. It doesn't end here. The conversation doesn't end here. There are some other aspects of AI. We're still looking at like equity and, you know, as it pertains to AI, those kind of stuff that we can have a conversation on later on and at CRC. So let's look at the program. Okay, so you will see here that we have 3 sessions. And there's 10-minute breaks in between, you'll see there. And there are themes. We'll start with the basics, academic integrity, second session, and third session. And we really will not get offended if you guys go in and out of the session, because I know that some of you are familiar with the basics or you have other things to do. Because we know that the level of exposure to AI will vary from person to person. So even the people online, feel free to step in and out as well. But make sure that you register. So that's the only thing we ask you to do. Break, we'll have a 10-minute break. You will see, we think that we're Gen Z. At least the presenters think that we're Gen Z. We'll have like a mini session, 10, 15 minutes per speaker. So our schedule is really tight to offer this program. So we are hoping that we close out at noon, okay? The questions, the Q&A will be towards the end. So we're looking at 5 minutes and we apologize for that. And then, I don't know, is chat available, Claudia? With chat, feel free to put in, you know, whatever you think about on chat. The presenters, however, will not be able to respond on that because we're focusing on what we're going to tell you in a short period of time. But if you have questions, we will be able to answer that in the Q&A hopefully for that 5 minutes. And if we're not able to do that within this session, then when we debrief the group, we'll debrief, then we'll try to answer that and then we'll share it to everybody. Okay. All right. Okay, so that is the program. So this is the guy. That's the reason why we're here, Alan Turing. Okay, so it's either we can be thankful for him, or we can blame him for what's happening here. So it can either go both ways. But he is the one who started it all. Okay? Asking simple questions, can machines think? So that's a simple question. And for those historians that we have here, we all know that Turing is the one who decoded Enigma. That really shortened World War II to like 2 to 4 years, saving a lot of lives. And so there's a famous test that's called Turing test, and it's basically trying to test the intelligence of the machine against the human. Okay, there are 3 participants, and then the judge will be able to say, okay, if your response, I cannot decipher whether this is a human response or a computer response, then the Turing test. A video that you can watch, a biographical video of Alan Turing is available, The Imitation Game. Watch it as it's so yeah, so this is the guy who started it all. So this is the basics. So we are providing key terms here. It's available on the research side.
I'll just take a large drip coffee to go. Okay. No, thank you.
A robot or something? You're turn out though. You never know. All right, so we have the common AI terms here. So the stuff that you probably would need to learn would be what we call the LLM, large language model, which is the sophisticated AI model trained on vast data sets to generate human-like text. Okay, so there's also what we call prompting. So I'm just highlighting the importance of prompting. It is what you put in, inputting text to, inputting text to guide the AI output. So something like develop a travel itinerary in Italy for a week, and boom, it will generate your trip, right? Or can be as specific, like write a kid-friendly poem about losing manners. Okay, I don't know if how many of you have played with ChatGPT is the one that I'm familiar with. Okay, great. Okay, so hallucinations. So I'll be talking more about this. It spits incorrect information, and it's because this I'm talking about ChatGPT or this it's relying on data that's can either be biased or incorrect information. From the last time I saw, from what I know, is ChatGPT only has data until August 2023. It was worse before, which is like their so anything that's after that, they're not part of the massive text of data that they're relying on. Okay, so it used to be 2021, so I guess it's improving now. So we have that. Now, what we talked about of course, the generative AI, which we are using here, it's basically you put things together and you'll be able to generate data, original ideas. So it's available on the research guide, the library research guide. Okay, let's talk about tools here. What's out there? So there's a compilation here of text generating AI for those people that attended the session before. I checked and they're all there. Of course, ChatGPT, Claude, Jasper, Perplexity, and there's a link to it too, that, and even Gemini that you can test on. I really don't want to evaluate them because there's some evaluations that I've seen, and sometimes this particular one is not part of it. And so it's just a developing system out there. That's text generating. Now, something that we can use here as educators, you have a list here, okay? And also multimedia, you have image generating AI tools, DALL-E 2, DALL-E 3. I'm pretty sure your students know about this stuff too. Midjourney is one of the most the most popular ones. Stable Diffusion is another one. So there's even audio generating AI tools, video generating AI tools, as well as code generating AI tools. So for AI detection tools, okay, the one that I've been seeing lately that's getting a lot of like accuracy or evaluation is GPT-0, Zero GPT, okay. Turnitin is another one, it's something that we have. But what I'm looking forward to is authorship by Grammarly. A lot of us are using, especially the one from English, right? And what's nice about authorship is that, and it's not out yet, it's out next month, is that it will highlight the text and it will tell you whether it's a human generated or AI generated or it's a combination. Okay, so watch out for that. That's for next month. So that is the tools that we have. So my last slide, the challenges and benefits, and most of this Tadael had spoken to. The academic dishonesty and detection is the challenge is the biggest one for us here. And so you will see that it is catching more attention because it's just easy for students to just go to AI, be able to complete their assignments faster and with higher quality. The problem that we have here as educators is that we don't know if students are really getting our content in or be able to get the skills that we want them to have. So also discussion as part of academic honesty is that the students are confused whether about what cheating is and also what is just getting help. So there is like a line where, oh, if I ask the ChatGPT to give me like a list of resources, am I cheating? So that's something that we need. We have some people here who will talk about like how do you, like syllabus recommendations, language that you can put in order to make it clear to students. So AI detectors, we just talked about it. They are pretty good and some of them are terrible. But then remember that detectors do not use students, okay? They give us, the professors, the probability that material might be AI produced. So which means that we, the people, which is all over the internet, will be flagged, okay, as AI generated material. Okay, another thing to consider too in this discussion of academic honesty, dishonesty, is that we are, as faculty, we are put we have to balance whether, are we going to do a more punitive approach to students who are policing the students who are using ChatGPT from the start to the end, or on the other hand, we don't want the students to feel that they're being left out with everybody in class is using it, and we're telling this group of students, no, you're not supposed to be doing that. So we don't want the students to feel that, because when you look at the career, when they go out there, some of them, it will be a norm that AI skills should be part of their portfolio when they look for a job. So the accuracy, the fabrication or hallucination of information is out there. So especially because ChatGPT is something that is generated, right? So it is good for if you're looking for like creative ideas, right? Because you put things together and boom, it will give you some nice, not even thought of ideas sometimes. But the problem with that is we have to tell the students that it fabricates. What do you mean by it fabricates? It will be good for getting like, okay, topics that they can work on. But then if it would spit out those citations or references, we have to tell them that they have to double check. Okay, so that's accuracy. For bias, internet is bias, period. Okay, so the information that we have there. So if they are basing the text on a biased information, what do you expect? Okay, so critical thinking, that's what we have to tell students. Always don't believe everything that you see on the internet. It's the same language that we used before. And sometimes it amplifies the bias too. So it just not gives you like a biased information, but it amplifies it. So when you go to, for example, you go to like a stable diffusion, which create images, and you say, create image for me of high-paying jobs. What it will spit out will be images with lighter color skin tone. Okay, because the basis of the data is biased already. So that's just an example. And then the student privacy. Yeah. So if you think that we need to be aware, always tell our students, don't put your names, don't put your, your confidential information if you don't want it to become public knowledge, because it will be part of the trained data that this ChatGPT or Gen AI is talking about. So benefits, there's a lot of benefits. Okay. Rubric, lesson plans, assignment prompts. You can even ask I'm talking about just ChatGPT because that's what I'm familiar with. Your case studies, scenarios, quiz question. If you're going to a conference and you don't know, I don't know what subtopics I'm going to talk about, use ChatGPT and it will give you outline that you can use for the conference. Okay. Student recommendations. How many times where we had to spend some time, but you don't want to do it because you still have other things to do? Use ChatGPT, student recommendations, and then you can just tweak it. Okay. How about in our committee meetings? Who's writing the minutes? Ask AI to do it, right? Expanding ideas for teaching and learning. You can ask it to give you, and these are examples. You can ask ChatGPT, what is missing in my syllabus? Or make my syllabus student friendly. You know, and then you tweak it and look at it. Of course, it will be something that you have to look at before you give it to your students. How about discussion prompts that will make an 18-year-old get excited? Try that and see. So that's for the expanding ideas for teaching and learning. This advancing individualized learning opportunities is something that I'm really looking forward to. For those people are math people, or math faculty, Photo Math, for example, which is an app that you can put on your phone, and then you scan the problem, and then it will solve it for you, and it will tell you how the computer got in. So different ways of doing it. Photo Math is. So what happens to the advancing individualized learning opportunities? There are so many technologies out there that you can use, whether it's an app or virtual reality. So how about using your phone and then go to, you don't know what the plan is, take a picture of it, and it will show you the name of the plan and the other description, how to take care of it. So many things. And then if you incorporate that in class, it will be great. Oh, okay, last one. So, supporting student learning with AI literacy. So, how about having this? These are examples. Have the students run with their work and get the feedback from AI. Okay, so this is for students. You take time to help them with research by asking AI to generate some citations from it just as a starting point. Or for you to connect with students, if there's a student who says, okay, this is what we see in the library. They come to us and we ask them, what's your topic? Oh, I don't know. Okay, so this would help us because if you have like a general, that's actually the hardest thing. They give us like a general topic. I can ask now ChatGPT on this aspect of a particular topic, and I can say, hey, how about this? Look at it. Connect with students. So I think I'll stop here, and then I'll let Jenna go to the next slide. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. My name is Jenna Trench. I'm a biology professor here at CRC, and I'm also a teaching and learning lead for science, mathematics, and engineering. I've seen many of you before in online workshops. I gotta be honest, this is kind of tricky for me to be like in front of a group of people. It's been a very long time since I've been talking to this many people in person. So forgive me if I'm a little bit nervous. This is like, okay. So anyway, my first topic of the day is how do we communicate effectively with AI? Rochelle has given us a lot of really great ideas for how we can use AI. And so I'm sort of going to do the basics as far as like, how do we talk to the AI and get it to give us what we want? And why do you suppose I have a picture of a dumpster here?
Garbage in, garbage
There you go, right? Garbage in, garbage out. So it's just like, you know, when you're trying to get your child to do something in the morning, right? Let's get ready for school. Well, they're like, sure, I'm ready. It's like, okay, wear your shoes, right? Did you brush your teeth? So we need to be specific with AI, just like we would if we were giving instructions to our child to help them get ready for school. And also the same way that we phrase our assignment instructions. So I know you've probably all had that experience where you write an assignment and you give it to your students And the result of that assignment was not at all what you expected. You were like, what was, okay, that's not what I was going for. So then we go back to the drawing board and we're like, okay, so how do I refine these instructions to actually get the product that I want? And it's the same basic idea with ChatGPT or Copilot or any of these AI chatbots, which is specifically what I'm going to be talking about, the chat tools. Because if we give them a really kind of general, ask them a general question, then it's not going to give us a very specific answer. Okay. There's a lot of information on this slide. Okay, so we're going to be talking about something called prompt engineering, which Rochelle mentioned briefly is prompting. And prompting is this idea, this is the conversation that you can have with an AI tool. And based on what you ask it, the qualities of the results of the answer will vary. And so we want to be very concise about what we're looking for. And we want to make sure that we define the desired outcome. Like, for example, design a Harry Potter themed birthday party. Okay, well, you know, this is for real. I'm doing this right now. So if I just put that in, you know, to a chat bot, I might get a Harry Potter themed birthday party that is, you know, more geared toward maybe like 10 or 11-year-old boys. But I have an 8-year-old girl and she may want to do something like different. Like maybe she doesn't want to play Quidditch. Maybe she wants to design a wand. Okay, so being specific is helpful. And we can just define outcome. Like in this case, it would be, you know, like a party for an 8-year-old girl. Okay, and then we have providing context, right? So, you know, who are you? Where is this going to be happening? Or in a case of like, if we're doing it for teaching, what is the modality? What sort of activity is this going to be? Is this an in-person activity? Is this a homework assignment? Is this a quiz question? Okay. And the last thing that I want to kind of do in my overview of prompting is that this is an iterative process. It's just like having a conversation with a person where you're trying to get to know them. You want to keep asking questions until you drill down and get exactly what you want out of it. And there's always going to be an option to do that. You may run out of free questions to ask, and that's where we get to alternative tools if you don't want to pay for it. Okay, so there's a couple of a couple of resources listed on this slide. One is the library guide, and there's some stuff in there on prompting. There's also an article called Prompt Engineering for Educators, Making Gen AI Work for You. That one's really helpful because it breaks down the basics of prompt engineering, and it also provides you with some examples of how you can use it for developing materials for your classes. So kind of a productivity tool, not necessarily a learning tool. And then there's actually an open textbook about using AI, and that's what the QR code there is for. It's called The Art, Craft, or Science of Prompting. And that's just one page in the textbook about AI for teachers. And so I found that really helpful if you're looking for really general introductory information about AI and kind of what it may mean for you in your classrooms. If you're just now starting to think about this sort of stuff, that is a good place to start. Okay, so prompting. If you go and do a Google.
Contents have been updated.
Okay, good. I'm glad it's updated. So if you were to go and then Google how to write a good prompt, a lot of different acronyms will come up. One of the acronyms that sort of stuck with me was PARTS. And this is an approach by a technique that Google suggests. And the QR code there is for a little handout that kind of describes the PARTS technique in a little more detail, but I'm going to do that here. So that's just for your reference later if you want to, like have a snapshot of it on your phone or something. So PARTS stands for persona, aim, recipients, theme, and structure. So these are the things that you want to have in your prompt. So I'll break it down so we can kind of talk about how this goes. Now, if you're like more than a dabbler in AI, I should have said this at the beginning. If you're more than a dabbler right now and you're a heavy user of chat, this may be a review for you, and I apologize. I'm hoping there's at least 5 people in this room who haven't done it yet, and this is helpful for you. Okay, cool. All right, so first, persona. You want to tell the tool who you are. That helps. It makes a big difference if you are a community college professor versus an elementary school teacher. Next, state your objective. That's the aim. Like, what are you looking to get out of the AI tool? What do you want it to do for you? Specify who your audience is. So you're a community college professor, but are you doing this for your colleagues in a department meeting? Or are you doing this for your students in your class? And if it's your students, then you probably want to specify what discipline you're teaching. You don't necessarily have to say like CRC Biology 100, but it could be just like introductory anatomy and physiology. All right, and then you want to have you want to outline the theme of the output that you want it to have. So is there a specific style that you would like it to follow? A tone of like encouraging or strict, rigorous? You can put that in there. And also any other related parameters you would like it to include. Okay, and sometimes tone is helpful because if I put like biology stuff in there, it's going to come out really dry and it's not going to sound like me at all. But you know, if you describe like how you would describe yourself, I don't know how I would describe myself, but let's just say effusive, then that's what you'll get. And then lastly, structure. So if there's a specific structure you want it to follow, like an outline or an assignment with, you know, introduction, instructions, expectations, help, then it can actually like, it will follow that when you do it. Okay. So that's the sort of nuts and bolts of how we would construct a prompt. And it doesn't have to be really long to still include all of these things. So the next 0 minutes, I'm going to briefly show you how to do this very quickly. Sorry, I'm going to go a little bit over. We are going to use this prompt to go to ChatGPT. No, not ChatGPT. I'm not going to show you that one. I'm going to show you Copilot. Okay, so if I escape out of here, am I still screen sharing the window? Okay. All right, so I'm going to copy this. Oh, not on a Mac. And then I'm going to go to Copilot for Microsoft. Okay. And oops, that's take me to Copilot. There we go. Oh no, took me somewhere else. Try again. Okay, here we go. Your everyday AI companion. Now, the reason that I'm showing you Copilot is because it has a paid option that our students have already access to through our enterprise license with Microsoft. So students can access the like super high-end version of Copilot, not the basic version of Copilot, and you can have access to it, and you can use it over and over and over again and never run out of prompts. So that's a very cool thing about Copilot. I'm not signing in right now because I don't really care about that. Okay, so I'm going to paste in my prompt. So generate a welcome announcement for a college level biology course that greets students, introduces them to the course, and outlines expectations and offers encouragement for the semester ahead. So here we go. Oh, okay. Sign in to start a new chat. Apparently I have ended. Oh. Let's try this. This is funny. It works on my computer at home sometimes. There we go. Okay, try again. I'm apparently signed in as you, Emily, even though I used mine. So now what you see happening is that Copilot is crafting the tool and the way that, and I'm not an expert at any means on how language learning models work and how they can actually do this, but they basically like build on the words that came before it. And so it starts writing and then it just keeps going based on what it knows from its model. And so here we are, we have a welcome message to our students of biology that describes the course. It gives a brief introduction to the topics that we will cover. It gives information about the expectations for the class, and then finally some words of encouragement. Could you use this right now? Not really. What are we missing?
Easily analyze whether or not that's actually what our course is going to be about.
I teach biology class, but these are certainly not the topics that I cover in my class. So I probably want to tailor that. Also, there's no information about how to get started, right? Are students coming to campus to a specific room at a time? Do they need to deal with parking? Don't forget to pay for parking or the bus or light rail. Do they, or is it an online class? And is there a specific date by which they must complete some assignments? Right? So this is an iterative process. I got a really good start here. I can go with that. I can even refine this by clicking copy, and then it'll start it over, okay, weird. Sometimes it copies it. Okay, apparently when you do it on a Windows computer, it's different. And then I can add more information in here. And I can say it's an online asynchronous course, class starts on this date, you must complete the orientation material. I can put that in my prompt, and then it'll spit out a new version that has that information incorporated into it. Okay, so that just saved me a ton of time. And, you know, it's sort of usable, okay? So this sort of thing you can do for lots of stuff. It doesn't necessarily just have to be for your classes. I used it to plan my daughter's Harry Potter themed birthday party, and I was super stoked, like hanging candles from the ceiling so that it looked like the Great Hall. Right? I would have never thought of that. So anyway, thank you for listening. And I think, are we on a panel?
So we have seen kind of what's in the field of AI, what's available, and Jenna gave us a good demonstration of how.
Okay, guys, we made it.
work.
Congratulations. on that
I
1
think
hour
it's
full
really
participation.
important
Amy, how was it for you?
Briefly
Good,
about.
move forward with some tests, solve some problems, so feeling better.
If you're on Zoom, can you mute, please? Thanks.
Hey, a little ambitious today, but I got a good amount done. I'll take the rest to the next level.
Evaluating, the
Right.
Claudia,
how's
Claudia, mute or talking.
Yeah, well, got a little less stuff.
So evaluating the output, Rochelle mentioned a little bit about some of the challenges that can be. You can have untrue content being generated by AI. And Jenna gave us a sense of like, what do we need to look at that's maybe missing from what's generated from our AI? So just really briefly, assessing the AI output is a key part of that iterative process to see if the information is usable, and then to be able to adapt it or continue to kind of hone it to what we need. Faris is going to talk a little bit more deeply about evaluating an AI in the learning process, but I wanted to go through a few things. OpenAI actually has a piece about does ChatGPT tell the truth? And I think if you're engaging in a discussion with your students, this is actually kind of cool to look at. When we're talking about large language models, it's trained on a large amount of information, but it's just generating what is plausible, right? And so it might sound really official, but it may not be true information. It doesn't know everything. The knowledge bases don't cover all human knowledge. And even some of the things that are input in it may be questionable. You also have bias inherent in the information that's been the AI tools have been trained on, and so that's being replicated in our in what's being generated. So as educators and as users of AI, potentially, or interacting with students who may use AI, we want to practice our critical thinking and evaluation skills when we're using the tool. So let's just briefly, I know we've got not a ton of time. So there are a lot of acronyms, kind of like the prompt engineering, and one of these was provided by an educator, Andrew Maynard, and he's looking at relevance, accuracy, completeness, clarity, coherence, and appropriateness. So you're going to need to, AI, even though it can help us in our efficiency, we need to take some time with the information that's output and evaluate, was what was output what we needed in terms of relevance? Is it responding related to what our prompt was? And if not, you might need to refine your prompt. Is it accurate? And often that requires us to do additional research and compare the results with other information on the topic, looking for sources or looking for something to evaluate against. Completeness, and so this is again kind of the prompt engineering piece that Jenna was looking at. We may have missing information on what was output. Clarity and coherence, I think, makes sense for consistency. I think what's important for us to consider is that AI, when it's generating this text and sounding very official, may not provide citations or the trappings that we're used to maybe go trace the source of information. And so we have to take some time to evaluate and compare what was generated with other sources. It often also requires a certain level of expertise. And so that's a caution for students too, when they're using AI for generating content that they're learners in. So I'm going to take us out because we're going to talk more about evaluating AI outputs a little bit later. I just wanted to point out a few more resources. A key piece of using any tool for ethically and responsibly is attribution and citation. And we actually will do that even when we're using outputs from AI. We should do that as well. So APA, Chicago, and MLA style are the most commonly used citation styles on this campus. They do have guidelines. So if you are using generated content from an AI tool, how do you attribute it properly in an academic paper? So these in our citation guide or in our slides, we are referencing a tool that Rochelle also linked to on our library site, research guides, and it is also linked in the presentation materials that we'll be sharing today. So this research guide on artificial intelligence, Rochelle did the bulk of the work, and I just added a few things. But for each of the citation styles, it gives instructions or a link to, for example, mlastyle.org, where they provided a good overview and also some thoughtful questions about interacting with AI. And then they're also giving specific, within MLA style, how do we actually take the MLA style and use the core elements to create a works cited format. So if you have questions about that for your citation style, later on, I'm happy to help you. When you're interacting with students, if you are permitting them to use AI generated content, then also giving them the tools on how to properly cite them. We're at the end of this particular section of our presentation, and we had a little bit of time allotted for questions. So I'm going to ask for some help with looking at questions on, actually I've got the Zoom open too. But if we have questions, and keep in mind that we are not experts, we're learners along with you. Yeah.
Emily?
Yeah.
Can you maybe talk a little bit about, so the AI tools don't provide citations. And so what have you done? Sure.
So Leslie's question was, the AI tools don't provide citations, and that they may, right? You can ask them to provide citations. Some citations may be made up, right? So as my critical thinking, my library research hat would say, I need to go look up that citation and see where it exists, and just doing a Google search, taking that citation from the AI tool, doing a Google search, seeing what comes up. If it's just looping me back to the AI tool or to student papers, but not an actual academic source of any kind, if it's not cited in any sources, if it's not coming up in any other tools, then that gives me a red flag, right? That I need to question what's been generated from that. Rochelle did mention there are tools, like this is an evolving area. And so some of the evolution in this field is there are tools to evaluate text to see what is AI generated and what comes from a source. So think of like Turnitin, where it highlights what matches other content. So we also have similar things happening, like being developed from other companies. So you can. So this is something where we have to practice our skills a little bit, and sometimes getting some intervention of, I've got a couple librarians in the room, and one of the things that we might do is take the text that was generated and do some searches in different tools to see if that brings up any matching sources. Yeah.
I think I thought loud enough, but I doubt it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Question is, in Canvas, is there an option for students to kind of click a box? But you know how we have a little box that says copyright or whatever that little thing is? Or you're uploading like whatever you're putting into Canvas. Is there a tool? I like the citation. I didn't know it's existed for the chat. I was actually thinking about how could I tell students just tell me truth? Like if you use it, just write it down. I know where you took this from. So I like this part. Is there something in Canvas that can be added so that students have to self-report kind of like, hey, I use these 3 chat AI things for my paper. I just want you to know. Thank you, right? Is there something like that?
I'm not familiar with that. Our colleagues are going to talk about classroom policies and things like that. And so I think let's listen in and see what other folks are doing.
Along those lines, and I know very little about this, I just know it is possible. Or anything maybe that's more creative, is there a way to block what students are putting out there so it is not being harvested by AI to then be used like in a photography class, all the pictures, if you're uploading it to certain software, there are agreements with that company that all that ish is getting used to train AI for the future. Like, do we have a way as an educational institution of stopping that, or do I have to find new software? I got like 3 days and I'm not really that deep into it, and like I'm just.
So that's not something I would pretend to be an expert on, but I think there's a couple of things we could do and also recommend that students are doing. Privacy policies for whatever tools they're using for their content management, what is owned or shared. I'm sorry, thank you. And then also considering, so I think we do have to be thoughtful of that. And this is a realm that is still being kind of battled out, right? When we look at artists and their creative work and what is being generated from that creative work, there is dispute about that. We see that in screenwriters and we see that in voice arts and stuff too. So I think we need to tell students to be aware of what they're putting out and what that can be in the future, what could be, how it could be used in the future. And then we need to pay attention to the tools and the policies that the privacy policies they do or don't have. I think you have that.
Thank you. So in light of what you're saying, do you believe that we as a college should be working on a college-wide learning outcome related to AI? And if yes, which department or other body in our college should be responsible for that development?
Just so you know, at Sac State, and this is for those people who are affiliated with Sac State, they have an office, they have created just a new office just for AI. So, personally, it would be, because it's a discipline issue, really discipline. So it's gonna be different from economics, for English, for math. And so, we actually have talked about it before, if there's gonna be like a policy that we can impose here. Some colleges I've seen, they change their academic integrity policy to include AI, right? Some people I've heard, but you know, the discussion is not really formal yet as to what we're going to do. If we have, some people are okay with having a general statement that it covers cheating, plagiarism. But it's up to us on how we want to do it. But the way I see it is, photography, for example, will be looking at the creative aspect of it, and so using AI is something that they want to have. For English, it may be something that they're testing, I don't know, with math. And so, to go back to your question, do you think we should have a college-wide statement? Is that what you're saying, or?
I was looking for learning outcome as to what our students who graduate with any kind of, certificate or degree, we would expect to know about AI, or how to be able to deal with it.
I've been looking at the other universities and colleges too. Some of them are moving that way to have an outcome. Some of them have decided, let's see what's gonna happen, because it's still a developing technology. So my personal feeling on that is, let's wait what's gonna happen, because we just don't know whether this is going to be something that will change the way, it has changed the way we live.
I think we, as a college, need to have further discussions about that, yeah. So I think we should encourage faculty and administration to have those conversations. We did have a question in the chat about comparing Copilot to ChatGPT. We don't have pro access to ChatGPT through Los Rios right now. Jenna, do you have a comparison?
So if you have a paid access to ChatGPT, there is a superior, more human-like version than you can get with the just free use of ChatGPT. The advantage of using Copilot, in my opinion, is that there is an equity issue with access to things that are behind a paywall. And regardless of which one is better, in some ways, we should perhaps encourage our students to use the one that is free to them. And secondly, Copilot is also paying for DALL-E, and DALL-E is a pretty impressive image generator tool, and it's expensive if you go through OpenAI to access it, but it is free for us there. So if you're looking to generate images, even just little graphics for your class, banners, that kind of stuff, you can access that for free. One last thing on image generation, if that is something you're interested in, or infographics or any of that stuff. Canva has a free educator account, and it has a magic tool now that also will generate graphics for you, presentations and videos for your students, using something that's built off of ChatGPT.
I think we'll pause for time. Thank you, everybody, for your questions. I know we'll have more questions as we go along this morning. If you're on Zoom, we're going to turn off the audio for a few minutes, take a break. And if you're in the room, the restrooms are around the corner. There's food and drinks in the back. Thank you all.
I'm very pleased to see these PD offerings for
Are you surprised?
um I don't know. No, I mean, I guess I'm not surprised. I don't know how they I don't think I think the thing is that they don't enforce attendance. Um and so that's where the thing comes in, where you just have a wide range. I mean, it's like high school too, like who does PD, who doesn't. Um
It should enforce that.
yeah. I mean, if they do, they have to pay for it, of course, pay the people. But so I missed the session that was called Basics and Playtime with AI, which I'm getting, I think, through my other.
Yeah, I agree.
And so the one that's about to start is academic integrity.
Okay.
And the next one is assessment strategies in the age of AI. At 2:30, I'm going to attend one called What's New in Distance Education at CRC. But it says specifically at CRC. So I'm like, are they talking about being a good distance educator, or are they just talking about changes at CRC? But whatever. It's just. And then to Friday, I have a department meeting that luckily I can attend via Zoom.
So.
Hello, Erin, you are unmuted during your conversation. Just want to let you know.
in this round, chances are they probably will remain in the next round. It will be hard.
No, everybody, get ready for attention.
I mean, I know.
Yeah, everybody is down for the center. The second one, these are going that I can everything in Gen AI. So we have bundle function. Rose are here. Not that money. Thank you.
All right, good morning, everybody. My name is Wendell Fishman, for those of you who know me, I teach computer science. And I'm going to talk about some strategies for
We also have an advancer. Would that be helpful?
yeah, you know what, I just have one slide, okay.
Okay.
I passed the test. Okay, I'm going to talk about some strategies that you may consider if you have to address what I call AI cheating, for lack of a better term. You know, Michelle has talked about the benefits and as well as the challenges. There are challenges, and these are powerful tools, but unfortunately, it also can make it easier for a bad actor to violate academic integrity, as I'm guessing some of you are aware. And so there's three basic steps that I would recommend. To investigate, plan a course of action, and communicate with the student. And so if you find yourself in an unfortunate position of having to deal with this, I'm going to talk about this through a story. I'm going to tell you the story of how this happened to me, like how I dealt with this as an instructor. Seems like a long time ago, but it was last year, spring of 2023. And I was grading an exam. It was an online JavaScript class. And, check one.
Yeah.
Testing, okay. Yeah, so I was grading an exam and I noticed that a student had aced the final. And that doesn't happen often, but it happens. But that student I knew had been struggling in the class. And I looked carefully at the questions, and there were some red flags. In fact, some of you might notice, like the first flag is that the English grammar was perfect. Right? The writing, spelling, the sentence structure, everything was flawless. And there was another thing I noticed, the formatting was a little unusual. If there was like a listed set of items, each list item would be bold and bulleted with the text indented. Oh, sorry. Is this one working?
I think it is, but you need to be really close.
As long as you speak close to it, we're good.
Notice. But so I was wondering, I didn't want to unfairly accuse or suspect a student. And so that led me to do some research. And that's step one, is to investigate. All right, so the first thing I did is I looked at the writing that I received from the student, their discussion posts, and sure enough, the voice that they used in their personal communication matched the voice in the exam questions. And you should, I think, from what I've heard, you should keep copies of all of your documents. In the event that this gets escalated to the administration, or if the student files a grievance, the administration is going to ask you if you have, evidence and any kind of documents you want to keep track of. Also part of this first step, you might want to communicate with other students, with other faculty or administrators. And I spoke with one of my colleagues shortly after this happened, and they had also experienced something similar. And they said something that stuck with me. They said, we can no longer prove it. Right? That's one of the things I think that separates when you talk about, Todd, I was talking about like search engines and the internet. With the AI, well, put it this way, it's difficult, if not impossible, to definitively declare that this was, a copy, before we could use Turnitin or something like a plagiarism detection to find the source and say, okay, this was definitely copied. So that's one of the things that I think makes this more challenging. And so I had questions. I contacted my dean, and I love my dean, Tyler Rollins. I consider him a fellow nerd. He said, Wendell, send me your test questions, and he entered them into his copy of ChatGPT. And sure enough, the output was almost identical to the students' responses. So I felt on pretty solid ground to move forward. And that I guess gets us to the second step, which is plan a course of action. So again, hopefully you don't have to go through this. I'm guessing some of you have. But if you do, before you communicate with the student, you want to think about a couple of things. The first thing is you want to decide if and how you're going to penalize the student, right? And there's a range of options. You can do nothing. You can maybe take off a few points. You could give them, an F on the exam, maybe an F in the whole class. I don't know if that's justified. Or something more severe, so that you have to decide what you're going to do. In my case, I took off points on the questions that I suspected. And and then the other thing, I guess, to plan is before you talk to the student, think about how you're going to talk to the student. In terms of the modality, this was an online class, so I opted to do a telephone call. But I don't know, you might want to have them come in person, maybe Zoom. And then before you talk with them, also, I would sort of think through how you want that conversation to go. Like, what are the things you want to tell the student? What do you want to ask the student? Hopefully it won't become contentious, but it could, right? If they deny it and, and you set them, that could become a complicated conversation. And, you might want to take notes so you can have a fresh record of what was said. And so I want to see what happened. I graded the exam. The student sent me an email almost immediately, said, hey, why was I penalized? And I there was an issue with your exam, we need to talk. Tell me a good day and time, and I will call you. Okay. And I would, for the conversation, I would recommend try to keep it factual, or at least that's what I did. I just let the student know that, there was an issue. It looks like some of the exam questions that you submitted were generative AI content. And I let them know that, I checked this with my dean. And what I didn't do is I didn't say, did you do it? I would, if possible, avoid getting into that dynamic where you're accusing them if you can't definitively prove it. Instead, I said, listen, this is not allowed. We don't allow students to use these tools while they're taking an exam unless it's explicitly stated by the instructor. So I asked them the question, did you know this? It's not allowed. And to my good fortune, at that point, they confessed. And they said, they were actually emotional and remorseful. They said, I hadn't. They said they thought it was probably not okay, but they were, really worried about the grade in the course. And for me, if a student takes accountability for their actions, that goes a long way. And so I kind of softened my tone and let them know talented developer, and don't take shortcuts. That's my advice. Don't take shortcuts. This is computer science. We're here to solve problems. You need to get stuck. You need to stretch those mental muscles. And we had a good conversation. They talked. I asked the student what kind of tools they use. I was surprised. There's so many apps available. I'm going to try Copilot now. You know, we had a frank conversation, you know, because I acknowledge that it is a tool that's being used increasingly in our profession, but that, you know, there's, I guess, a debate to be had, like, what's the difference between saving time and replacing knowledge? Like, when is it appropriate to use this? And so we had, I think it was a pretty good resolution, you know, they remained engaged in the class. And but I walked away thinking there's a lot of unanswered questions for educators. And I brought this to the Senate, and we don't, as many of you probably know, we don't really have a policy yet. I like your idea, Marcus. You know, we need to think about this as an institution, although for which department, I would say not it. But yeah, I think it's good. I think so in the absence of guidelines and best practices at this time, I think it's good for us to share with our colleagues, you know, share experiences and advice. On that note, I'd like to open this up if there's time and see stuff like not really. But, well, how many of you have had a similar experience? Oh, okay, more than half of the folks in the room. Let me ask you, is there anybody who's had an experience where you suspected the student, but they denied it? I'm curious how if anyone wants to talk, like how did you handle that?
I see lots of English hands went up on that one. Oh, sorry. It's really challenging. I will just start with that, but I'm old now, so I was around before the plagiarism detectors were there. And I just really tried to approach it in the same way that I did suspected plagiarism before we had turnitin.com and things like that, where I would sit down with a student and say, you know, I noticed that this doesn't look like some of the other things that you've been turning in. Can you tell me, you know, did you have help with this, or was there a different way that you approached the assignment? I don't want to directly accuse them of doing anything, but I want to let them know, sorry, I'm feeling nervous too, like Jen will be in front of all these people. So I also just really wanted to let them know that I have an AI policy also in my syllabus, I should say that already. And I do try to clearly identify the areas where it's okay to use AI and where it's not. And so I feel like that opens up the conversation to talking about it. But at the point where I had this particular student I'm thinking of who denied it, I did not have that policy. And he was very confrontational, and it was on Zoom. I was really grateful that it was not in my office because it got kind of scary at one point. And so I really just backed off and I said, hey, you know, I kind of took a totally different approach and talked about how it was not addressing the assignment itself. And so that really ended up being the best way to handle the situation. And I pointed out the areas where it did not address what the assignment had asked to be done. And he said, okay, I can see that. And I gave him the opportunity to redo the assignment.
Thank you. That's good. Yeah, the syllabus is huge. Linda's going to talk about that in a little bit. Do we have time for one more maybe? Or? So in the spirit of time, let's keep moving. I'm going to pass it to Rosie and let me.
Hello, can you hear me? Yeah. I have a pretty loud voice for a tiny person. Hi, my name is Fairuz Ahmed Ramirez. You're more than welcome to call me Fairuz or Rosie. I am an adjunct here at CRC. I teach English composition and also English as a second language, mainly integrated reading and writing courses. I also work for Sac State Student Affairs. I'm the English composition faculty coordinator and first year writing instructor for Sac State Summer Bridge program. And I'm happy to be included in these conversations. Just last month, we were having these conversations as well. And so my focus is on evaluating and critiquing AI. If you click on this blue link here, which you guys can all see, that is an accessible Google Doc version of what I'm going to be talking about. So in our academic literacy discipline courses, I feel it's really important to prompt students to evaluate how knowledge in our discipline is constructed, how the basis of an idea is developed and maintained, and encourage students to critique and interrogate facts that often are and have been presented without discussing complexity and nuances. So for example, in Philosophy and Technology, which is an academic research article titled Artificial Intelligence in the Colonial Matrix of Power, Muldoon and Wu discuss how AI perpetuates hegemonic, Eurocentric, and ethnocentric knowledge production through Western values and knowledge, thus marginalizing non-Western alternatives within AI's production. And it limits the possibilities for decolonizing AI. So in other words, these scholars are prompting us to investigate how AI presents output that is biased, which we've kind of already heard all this, right? And explore AI solutions and identify disparities in AI, such as based on gender, race, geography, income, and societal factors. So for those of you who are unfamiliar with these terms, like Eurocentric, hegemony, ethnocentric, if you click on those links there, it'll take you to explain, just because I know we're short on time. So how can we encourage students to critique AI information? Active learning. Evaluate how AI discusses topics and use critical inquiry, investigative research to add to AI output conversations. Students' voices, students' critical questions to add to the conversation, right? So for instance, ask students, pick a topic, explore the topic using ChatGPT. What did you learn about the topic after using ChatGPT? Whose voices and perspectives might be missing? And then prompt the students to develop focused research questions after they've analyzed AI outputs, right? To further investigate the topic by incorporating primary sources, right? Like real people, or other reliable sources. I also think it's really important to learn from others. This is Anna Mills. If you click on this blue link right here, it'll take you to her personal website where she shares. She is actually on a task force for MLAACC task force on writing in AI. She was one of the first people to test one of the, I think it's ChatGPT 4. But yeah, and she also has her own OER textbook, How Arguments Work, a guide to writing and analyzing text in college. And in that text, she has a whole section dedicated to template phrases that students can actually use when they're responding to a text, about a text. So for example, I'm only showing 2 here. The other ones are on relevance and accuracy, but this is on clarity and bias. But what you could do is you could ask students to read a text and then use, let's say, for example, clarity, last bullet.
We don't have that up.
Oh, I'm sorry. There you go. Thank you, Jenna. So for example, on clarity, the last bullet, the AI is providing a surface level answer without diving into the nuances of XYZ topic, right? So you're giving students these language phrases to use to be able to respond to whatever it is they're reading, right? That's active critical reading. Bias. I'll read the last one. It appears the AI has taken a literal approach, but missing the cultural context of, right? So these, again, you can use this for perusal, hypothesis, or maybe just in class as annotations. And that's it for now. We'll see you a little bit later. I'm going to hand it over to. That's it for you.
Hello, can you hear me? Okay, I'm gonna try to keep my face close to the mic. And I confess this is like the third set of PowerPoint slides I've ever made. It's just not part of my pedagogy, generally speaking.
But let's see if I can advance, hopefully I can advance the slides as necessary, and if not, Wendell will be my assistant, I think. Cool. So something that Wendell said, really stuck with me, and, just as I sort of forecasted part of where we're gonna be going here, Wendell, when you said, in your conversation with that student, that you said, don't cut corners because you need to stretch those muscles. My brain went like lit up, because part of what I want to suggest to you here, that's going to come up in a slide, but the big take home messages of my portion of this is the importance of clearly communicating not only what your policies are for use of AI, but why they are. So with that said, some of you know me as one of CRC's faculty union reps, which I've been for about 1,000 years now. Actually, let's say quite a few, fewer than 20, but a long time. So here is a link, direct link to Article 17 of our CBA, our contract. It's called Academic Freedom. It's quite short. But in a nutshell, it gives faculty, and not all community college faculty throughout the state have this in their contract, interestingly, but we do and have for a long time. Faculty have academic freedom and professional autonomy as part of that, meaning that faculty have the right and responsibility to determine both the assignments and the modes and methods of assessment of those assignments. So bottom line is that where we are as a college and as a district, maybe where we'll stay forever, is that just like with our academic integrity policies, if I can advance the slide. Just put the space bar. Yahoo! Okay, it's that easy. So what we have already is linked here, and you can also see it on the screen here. So within our faculty and staff resource guide, which you're linked to here, and then specifically the student behavior and academic integrity webpage, it provides multiple tools to support your decisions. And by your, I'm thinking individually, departmentally, however this might get decided. There are various perspectives out there on how academic freedom should be understood. The AAUP defines it as faculty as opposed to administration. Many interpret our contract to mean individual faculty versus whole departments. But bottom line is that faculty should be the ones making these decisions. So important language from this page. Academic integrity is currently defined on this as part of the academic integrity statement as involving these 5 nouns: honesty, trust, fairness, respect, and responsibility. And there are definitions of plagiarism and cheating that exist there, if you want to borrow them. And then the honor code is another tool that could be useful to sort of factor in if you haven't already in relation to AI. And I think, yeah. The very last sentence of this paragraph about the honor code, I just wanted to highlight. It's intended to be used frequently and easily. And part of what I also want to emphasize here, you're going to see it on the slide, is the importance of regular reminding and reinforcing of whatever your policies are. So whatever you determine and why, and the why. We don't want to just put that in a syllabus, talk about it on day 1 and never come back to it, right? Kind of a recipe for disaster. This is taken straight from this page, suggested honor code uses. And I think part of what I liked about this and why I wanted to share it is that I think exactly what is here is applicable not just to the honor code, but to any policy you develop regarding AI use. So syllabus, yes, including it in your syllabus, but also in conjunction with major assignments, having those reminders of what what the role or lack thereof of AI can be, should be in any given assignment with special events, possibly classroom management, but maybe less AI related. And then regarding documentation, if it does come to, as Wendell was alluding to, if it went even further and you determined that you wanted to make a referral for a student code of conduct violation. So there are so many options out there. There are so many existing models, including from our own colleagues, some of whom are in this room right now. What I offered here with these 4 bullet points is what I see as a kind of spectrum. One of these sources down here that's linked suggests 3, and I thought 4 made more sense. So at one end of the spectrum, an absolute prohibition. I think that still requires some clarification with students, like, can we use basic Grammarly? Can we use spell check? Can we use what is already contained within Microsoft Word, right? They deserve to know what's okay and what's not. I think for most of us, of course, spell check and basic, sort of grammar flagging stuff, like this is just how we live now. But what exactly is the line for you if you say no use? What does that mean? Even define generative and regenerative AI for students. So that's one end of the spectrum. The other end of the spectrum is use actually being not just encouraged, but required. And you'll see some examples later on in this Learning Institute of some assignments that actually require the use of AI. And in between, some use permitted, recommended that you include definitions and some examples, whether those are embedded in the course documents or that you present them for students, that they have access to some degree of specificity so they can really picture what it is you're saying is or isn't okay. And then the sort of penultimate one here, use encouraged, not required, but encouraged, again, with definitions and examples, what that might look like. There are 3 links here. The first one is a repository of syllabus statements by CRC faculty who offered them up in the survey that went out in the spring. And that survey was completed by the Academic Senate's Academic Integrity and Generative AI Work Group. And I forget who referred to that earlier, maybe Rochelle. And let's see if I can click on that. Gonna let me? Yes, it is. Okay. So you'll be brought to this little pie chart. Interestingly, this is from last spring, but notice it was a minority of only like 60-something responses. So it wasn't a majority of the faculty, but a majority of those reporting said, no, I don't have a syllabus statement. So when you get taken to this page, you have to click to get to the actual statements. And here you have some examples. Marcus, yours appears close to the top here. Fairuz is here, Wendell's is here. I think Fairuz, yours is more like an announcement, right, to your students, and you're like, okay, we need to have a.
That was before.
Yeah, and you've revised it since. So you see kind of a collection of where people were in the spring, people who offered up their syllabus language. And then there are a couple other links. Let me show you those real fast. So I took these out of order. The last link has 3 positions. This is a UT Austin resource. And it has multiple examples of language on different places on this spectrum. And then if you're really feeling like going crazy, there are 150 examples of syllabus language here. This is the presentation of this doc. This is a sort of national repository of people who offered up their stuff. And this presentation is organized according to, but of course it's searchable. But it's organized according to the discipline or the course name on the left column. And these, just like CRC faculty, are all over the map, everywhere from the end of the spectrum that's no, 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 and here's why, all the way to yes, 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 you gotta use it, and here's why. Okay, so last slide here is the kind of what I mentioned initially. Is big takeaway from this, I hope, for you. It's just as important as clarity in your course policies and expectations of students, whatever you determine is appropriate in relation to academic integrity and AI use. The what of your policies is your rationale and reasoning, the why of your policies. Using plain language that connects the what to the why helps students see that your policies are rooted in careful thought about, crucially, what would be most helpful for them as learners. I think you will probably agree with me that students are more likely, or you might feel true to you, that they're more likely to go, oh, that's why? Okay, I can respect that. More likely, right? No guarantees, but if they understand that why, that this isn't just, a prohibition for prohibition's sake, you may be able to connect with them. Last point is regularly reminding them of and positively reinforcing both the policies and the reasons for being, integrating that through your course rather than, again, doing the sort of one time only is likely to have the kind of effects that you're looking for and will, we think, dramatically reduce the likelihood of the kinds of conversations. Again, no guarantees, but probably have fewer conversations of the type that we've heard from some of our colleagues and many of us have already had with students. Thank you. So we have, I don't know if we have any time. We're supposed to have a break. That clock is totally unreliable, so I'm not sure exactly what time it even is.
Q&A until.
Yeah, so we do have time. Questions?
On the Zoom chat, there wasn't a specific question. There was a little discussion of AI detection tools, like the Turnitin feature for AI detection. And so some of the discussion online was a question of how effective are those? If anybody has experience they'd like to share. Marcus.
My experience from talking with many colleagues about this is that the tools are unreliable at best, and you can actually circumvent them if, as part of the prompt, you add the statements that change the response so that the response would be impossible to detect or as difficult as possible by detection tools. So my strong suggestion at this point in time, at least, don't rely on whoever purports to have good tools, because chances are they're not.
There was some discussion of this at Senate last year, and I think one of the concerns too was what Wendell, I think, mentioned is blaming or approaching the student with an accusatory attitude, and maybe taking the time, like Wendell demonstrated, to get more information and then have a conversation with the student. Brandon, do you?
Yes, sorry. It came back, I was taken out by that.
All right. So when I do use the tool Turnitin, because I do, and if I go in and look at, because you can go in and look at everything they put in there. Like you can pull a list and do a PDF, right? So I'll do that, right? If I go in there and I see like 18 websites that are piecemealed information, it's not their real voice in there, and they're like 40% on the Turnitin, I'm like, hey, go see a librarian. And I send them to Emily. To the library, right? Because they have to learn they're not understanding researching things, right? It's that they're finding information. I don't care if you found it. You just have to say it wasn't yours. And where did you get it from? Is it relevant to what I'm asking? And so that's how I've used the buffer, is because I'm not as skilled in AI. I don't completely know how to navigate to ensure it is AI, or to just, they said something different, try to do strategy, right? And so I lean into the library heavily, and I also lean into research guides, and so that's kind of my go-to in between learning more about AI. So I do see it, and they will pull things, and they'll be honest enough for now, because I use case studies in my courses, so it's a little bit harder to lie to me. So they're like that was very judgmental what you said about that pregnant girl. Oh, I didn't mean that. Well, where did it come from? I mean the, okay, well then just tell me. You sound judgmental. That's a little judgmental. Got it.
Debating on whether I wanted to say something or not. Hi, Rebecca, just in case, for those of you that I haven't met, my name is Melly Sanchez, and I serve CRC as the Dean of the Library and Learning Research Center and Student Services. Really long title just to say I work here, but I also report as the conduct officer for our college. So I know we kind of started this conversation and I've talked to you, or like, you know, we've exchanged emails with some of you when you've had come across these issues, but the one thing that I also want to bring up to the conversation that Professor Ramirez also brought up is that the tools, although they're not reliable because they're constantly changing, but we have this conversations with multiple folks who are like super in the industry and they know that they're not able to catch up. The one thing that I see on my end that that I will challenge us or will like to add to the conversation is that the students who usually get flagged and that do get come back and say hi and turn it in, are typically students of color and then their specific gender, and I'll tell you why, because at the beginning of AI, it was a tool that was purchased and it was like there was a fee for it, right? So then the folks who had accessibility to those tools and to the higher tools that will give them more time to practice, to get to know how to get around it and not get detected and flagged, are usually folks who come from more affluent backgrounds. I just want to put that out there because reminding us of who we serve at CRC, right? Like the population that we're really looking to move forward. And not that I'm in any way, shape, or form justifying, academic dishonesty, but it is an opportunity for us to kind of put that into perspective and have that be part of the conversation so that as we're moving forward of like, how do we change the behavior, not the student, because our goal, that's my goal too as a conduct officer, is like, we're looking to just address the issue, change the behavior while we're keeping the students here. So just wanted to bring that up for your conversations, because I think this is a great way to communicate with the students, to make sure that you're explaining things and putting it out there, because to Linda's point, absolutely, you have no idea how many students are like, well, I know it's in the syllabus, but I never saw it again, so I never heard it, so I didn't really ring a bell as I was going through my assignment. So just putting that out there as your, communication with the student, and then of course, I'm always here to support, to have a conversation before we even get there, and have through a conversation with your teams as well, because they are your first line of support as we're reaching out for this. So let me know on how I can support it, and I'm open for that too. But just wanted to add my piece for the conversation. Thank you.
I'll just say one more thing. In regards to using Turnitin, I have used Turnitin. I've used other AI detector. What do you call an AI detector? Whatever. I use it to confirm the hunch that I already have about the student. Because my assignments are so personalized and because I provide so many opportunities to teach students how to do critical analysis and synthesis, my hunch is already confirmed. But again, I just use that to help make a judgment call. Yeah, that's all I wanted to say. And I don't rely on that to tell me something about students' abilities to be able to critically analyze the size. I don't know, maybe that's just something. I'll just say one of these.
Something that I think is true about the Turnitin tool in Canvas is that while you can have it set, which I always do, for students to be able to see their own Turnitin report and encourage them to and use it as a learning tool, I don't think you can set it so that they can see their AI detection score, which I think is unfortunate. But if you're gonna have, in my opinion, if you're gonna have a conversation with a student, it's only fair that you would show them, if you are relying on a detection tool, that you would share that with them and show them and explain to them, walk them through your logic, walk them through how you drew that conclusion. Like Kelsey was saying, this writing is so different from other submissions that I've seen from you over X number of weeks or months. Can you help me understand how this could be?
One minute, but we're good. I mean, we can sort of make more questions.
Can I ask a quick question? What percentage of people, or do you want to ask this for me with the, oh, you have the mic, Wendell. Totally unscientific pool, but if you currently have, or already know you will have in your fall syllabus, an AI policy, raise your hand. If you're classroom faculty, I should say. Okay, interesting.
You want to let the folks at home know how many people raised their hand?
Oh, yeah, sorry. Out of sight, out of mind. I apologize. Yeah, so sorry. We collapsed the view of some of the participants just because it was interfering with what you could see in the people's slides. So folks at home or who are joining us remotely, could you raise your hand if you currently have and or are planning to have an AI policy statement, perhaps additional materials to this fall?
We got a whole group on here.
It's gonna explode because they're gonna put it at the top.
Yeah.
There you go. All right.
So I think I would just encourage folks to consider adding one in this remainder of the week because it will help, I think, with student conversations. Rihanna, do you want me to?
So the one thing I was gonna say, I'm gonna challenge myself to do this semester is to attach the AI policy to every single assignment to flag and to remind them.
Yeah. That's all. And some folks online kind of confirmed the same thing. Yeah. Or were you just reading? No, I have questions. Oh, thank you.
Hi, Brianna Fisher. I am the faculty coordinator for tutoring services. I'm going to be publishing an AI statement in our Canvas page that students opt into for tutoring services. It's going to be pretty general though, right? Because I don't want it to say like, any AI detection is going to be, reported to your teacher, but I do want them to understand the resources that are available. I do want them to know that they need to refer to their instructor's direct policy in their syllabus and statements like that. I think my question here, because I have such a wide variety of faculty here, there are times, so even in the spring, we had incidents where, for example, a student turned in a paper on turnitin.com for their reading and writing center. Well, the only portion that showed up as sort of AI generated was their conclusion. And so so the student's argument was like, this is all like essentially my work. And she used an AI generator to sort of sum up her ideas from her paper, if that makes sense, right? So every circumstance is so very unique, right? When we have math, we had tutors that thought folks were cheating on assignments, things like that. So there's such a wide variety of assignments that we see in tutoring services. With the one who sort of plagiarized, I don't even want to call it plagiarized, used AI to support her conclusion. We did reach out to the instructor to say, hey, does this work? And I think my question for you all is, would you prefer more open communication in that sense where it's like, in things like that, would you prefer, are you okay with sort of us individually reaching out to you to get clarification on what that policy is, or just redirect? Is there more of a preference to redirect the student your way? Obviously, if it comes up as 90%, that's a whole different conversation, right? There is no point of even, this is all copied. But I'm wondering if you all have thoughts or comments around, us redirect them for questions like that, where it seems like they used a little, but it doesn't seem like, it didn't come up, but to your point though, it could all still be all supported if we can't figure it out. So any sort of advice, thoughts, as we begin to sort of post these statements and offer more resources within tutoring services? Big question, I know, not a lot of time, but.
So I know you have a percentage in your syllabus.
Yeah.
I was thinking, Rihanna, this would be a good question to bring to the council of chairs, where you have all the department chairs in the same space. Because it sounds like it's so discipline specific that you might want to have kind of like an open you up in that way. But I think for me, come to me, please, yeah, I need to know what happened. Because I feel like, again, everything is so different. And so they use it on a case study, and again, I see like, hey, that was me, what you said you do for intervention. Oh, I found it in this thing, right? I need to know where they got it from, so I can redirect them to the right thing. So that, I think that's a better policy for me. Again, I like the library and tutoring, and so I will send them off, right, to get more support. So that's what I suggest, council chairs.
As to your challenge, yes, absolutely. Personally, send students my way, even though I think the department level discussion is very valuable here. But also have students refer back to that syllabus for those of us who don't have that statement in there. Because at the end of the day, that's the contract, right, between the students and the course. But yeah, if there's clarification, I certainly would love that open conversation with tutoring at any time.
I think we need to do our last break. Yeah, thank you, everyone. Thank you. Okay, so if you're online, you'll see the time will resume on the screen. What time? 11:10. Thank you.
Hello, I'm ready for the last session. Assessment strategy in relation to AI. Maybe we ask if you're ready to.
Oh, we're good, okay.
Come back.
And I want to know that's because. They're starting. I think it's
Slow. Great that you told me that. I was like, I should look over there. I got all this. Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know.
Okay.
Congratulations.
I have seen your game. I knew you was this. I know the guy I've ever met. You too. Congrats on your. You've heard me talk about it. My name Amber. That's what you said. You're off. At least when I say. No, are there lots of people? I'm just kidding. Oh.
Hi, everyone.
Amber's coming. Where are we going, Rachel? Rebecca will be there. Amber and Mike are coming. Well, thank you for letting me know.
So I think this last group is going to kind of have some really practical approaches, applying what has been said so far.
I know. That's a lot of pressure. I don't want to adapt anything I say.
So one thing that I like to do, this is not exactly what I'm going to be talking about, but just as I was thinking as other people were talking, is I like to use every once in a while, really, really recent publication. Rochelle was talking about the time lag of AI, and so that's worked really well for me for some of my assignments. I actually have assignments related to students using AI in all of my classes. And I also really focus on fostering and really honoring our students' voices. I'm going to start though with a little bit of context. Some of us did a PD opportunity, a couple of PD opportunities last semester. And we met with Rihanna and her tutors, and we learned so much from the tutors, the student tutors who work with our students, and what are some of their fears or reasons why they may plagiarize. One really big one is they don't believe their writing is academic enough. And so kind of that artificial academic stance that I'm hoping is kind of going away a little bit. They have anxiety about errors and they don't really know what to say. And so I think if appropriate, share really excellent writing within your content. Really original voices in your content. So not overly sort of scholarly stance. And help students analyze these styles. That if you're getting the information and it's really fun to read at the same time. Value sincere efforts over error-free writing. I really changed my stance on that. I kind of like when I'm grading my students' writing, and of course that's really important when you're teaching English. Sometimes I'm like, oh, you know, I see this little error here. I know that this is original. I'm just totally fine with it. That spelling is so sweet. In your feedback to student writing, encourage them to continue using their own unique writing voice. I have my students write, and my classes are either on ground or hybrid, write in class every day. We have a free write every day, and so I get to know their writing, and so that really helps me if I see something that seems really different from how they write. They get credit for doing it. So anyway, it's really a free write. I don't care about errors. I just want to know their thoughts about something. Okay, so this is just one example from my British literature class last semester. There are two poets that are really, really difficult to understand in the 20th, well, once at the end of the 1900s, Gerard Manley Hopkins and W.B. Yeats. And some of the poems are just incomprehensible. And so I thought this would be a great opportunity for them to be able to use AI to help them. So what the assignment, and so when you receive the slides, you can look at the whole assignment as well as the poem options that they had. Basically, I asked them to choose from the poems one that they wanted to write about and find one line or no more than 3 lines from the poem that you are really confused about. Take those lines or that line and put it into a prompt into ChatGPT. And this was sort of the first time for doing this assignment. I recognize now that I need to give more instruction on how to compose the prompts. But so what I did, and I did this twice during the semester, is as I was going through Canvas and I was seeing what ChatGPT came up with based on the different prompts on the different poems, is a great deal of repetition. Whole phrases, even if it was a different ask, the student put in a different ask, it was a different line from the same poem or a different poem from the same poet. Really repetitious responses from ChatGPT. So what I did is I just had a Google Doc and I started just making notes as what I was noticing about ChatGPT. And I shared that with the students that these are some really great results from ChatGPT, and these are some not so great results from ChatGPT. So I have an example on here of that quotation, overall these lines capture the theme of impermanence, blah, blah, blah. Probably 15 students had those exact words, even though they had put in different prompts and sometimes different poems. Like we've learned before today, the more specific the prompt, the better the result. That meant that the stronger readers and writers received better responses. And so that is my goal of this coming semester, to help them based on what I've learned from my colleagues here. One thing that I really noted is that I could tell if students went directly to ChatGPT before going through the materials I provided for them, like about the authors. Because they didn't have important context that they could put into the prompt. The time period, the philosophy of the poet, what was life events in the poet's life. So I have a couple of examples here, like, I think it's on the next slide. Okay, so if the students don't have the context in order to use those important keywords, they will get the same old response and not something that's really useful. Okay, so this is a Canvas response that I sent to one of the students. Because sometimes okay, I'll just say that the student had an interesting question based on something that she read in the poem that she was connecting to Christianity. So this is my response. ChatGPT did a pretty good job because you asked good questions. This is in the response box on Canvas. However, I disagree with ChatGPT's answer. So faculty, we actually are smarter than ChatGPT. ChatGPT didn't know this. And here I think AI was grasping to make a connection, not knowing anything about Gates' theology and mythology. In the Gates slide presentation, which was available to you, and I asked you to look at, you will see that he did not accept Christianity, but created his own spiritual beliefs and mythology and Eastern spiritualism. So that was a really great learning experience, both for me and for the students, about what ChatGPT can and can't do. I also shared with them when I saw ChatGPT giving false answers. So I have quoted things fall apart is a line from, okay, things fall apart. This line borrowed from Chinua Achebe's novel, Things Fall Apart, suggests a sense of disintegration and decay. So the students would not have known that that Nigerian author was not even born when that poem was composed. So I think it's really, it was a fun exercise for me, and a great way to kind of just show, okay, you know, when we do this next time, we're gonna kind of adjust how we do it. So one of the things that I always do as part of this assignment is I ask students to reflect on the assistance they received, how helpful it was, and how it impacted their own critical thinking. Okay. Oh, it's my turn.
Alrighty. Going to be some overlap between what Dr. Gale just talked about and what I'm about to talk about. Okay, how to deter students from using AI in English 300 and ESL 47. It's an integrated reading and writing class. So I just want to say, I think that assignments that emphasize and monitor students' self-awareness of their reading and writing process, rather than just the final product, will hopefully discourage students from using AI to do their work for them, right? With the exception to a few students who may be procrastinators and turn and rush to AI-produced work. Yes, it's expected. So if you're curious about how I do this in my class, you can click here and it'll take you to my personal website, and you'll be able to see actual literacy portfolio. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that here. So portfolio assessment and metacognitive assignments, right, really allow the student and the teacher to capture learning via metacognitive reflection. So like really asking the student to pause and explain their strengths and their limitations, right, in a specific assignment. I guess a perfect analogy is like asking a student who's doing a math problem to explain how they got the answer. Similarly with reading and writing, you know, many of us writing instructors teach writing as a process, right? So how can we get students to do that, right, in low stakes formative assessments? If you click on this link right here, this will take you to a video where there's someone talking about, oh, sorry, I did it again. Yeah, sorry. If you click on this blue link right here, there's someone from the Center of Engaged Learning at Elon University who's talking about the benefits of portfolio assessments. And then, okay, thinking about kind of like what Dr. Gale was talking about, you know, and what I talked about earlier, active critical reading for deeper learning and engagement, I think framing our writing assignments as extensions of the class discourse challenges students to respond to the course content with new ideas of their own, right? Something AI generally can't accomplish. So I personally use class time to do active critical reading to nudge students to ask questions about the text they read. So for example, early on in the semester, I have students read this essay, How to Read Like a Writer. It's written by an actual writing instructor. And then I say, okay, please share one quote that stood out to you and develop one question about the text. Explain why you chose that quote to your readers and your audience, and then explain the thinking behind the question you are asking, right? And then these questions right here can be adapted to any text you're having students read that you want them to emulate and model, right? Because I want students to learn how to write an essay, engaging essay. Answer the question. Is there anything you notice in this essay that you might like to try in your own writing? What is it? What's that technique? Is it analysis? Is it synthesis? Is it storytelling? Are you starting, did this author start with narrative? When do you plan to try using it? What are some of the different ways that you can learn about the context of a text before you begin reading it? So for this specific question, obviously, if it's somebody, if a student is looking at a text for the first time, right? In my class, I really try to emphasize, provide many learning opportunities for students to distinguish summary, analysis, and synthesis writing to demonstrate that critical thinking that Dr. Gale was just talking about. So for example, here is a prompt, and I was just talking to Jenna earlier. I'm too chicken to try doing this actively in class. So that's going to be my, I'll try that this semester. So for example, they summarize and describe the purpose of the author's overall message. Your summary should describe how the writer introduces the topic and what is the significance, the meaning of the topic being discussed by the author. So if we're all being real, students can easily get this first part from ChatGPT, right? So then I try to push, we look at models of what like a summary is. So then I try to push students, okay, but you need to analyze the quote that represents the writer's overall purpose, right? That illustrates the writer's purpose. Support your analysis with the rationale. Again, unpacking what you mean. And then I try to push them further to synthesize and discuss how will you utilize the author's message or purpose of writing and apply it to your own life? Or how might we apply the author's message to the real world? In other words, what are the implications of this piece of writing or study, depending on exactly what we're looking at? Yeah, and I'll change the phrasing. Another thing I try to do, actually I always do, is at least 2 sessions of peer review with guided rubrics. And I make revision and reflection integral to the assignment. So it helps the student critically examine, reflect, and improve their writing process, which I think makes it harder for them to go and use AI as a clutch. And that's where I'm going to stop and transition it over to. Am I next?
I was supposed to go second.
Oh. You should skip over my stuff.
What? I don't see your check.
No, my slides.
Huh? Yeah, but both of those were, that's mine too.
But I don't need a slide. I'll just I mean, I'm just gonna continue on this theme, talking about how to deter the use of AI. In computer science, one of the areas where it's become an issue is with exams. And if you take a step back, this really has, for at least for me, kind of created a big. I spent a lot of time thinking about, well, what do I need to teach my students? We're preparing them for careers in the future. Well, what does the future need students to know, especially if they're actually going to be needing to use ChatGPT? And so I've really spent a lot of time sort of re-examining my SLOs. And I'm not trying to make everybody do a lot of work, but some of you may need to think about that. And once you sort of just come with what you're going to teach, then how do we assess that, right? How do we test competency? And so I've come down and there's two questions I ask now. How do I assess the competency while at the same time deterring the use of AI? And what I've come to is a technique I call anchoring, or you can think of it as personalizing a question. And I'll give you an example. In computer science, let's see, I teach a class in Python programming. And I might ask, okay, what's the difference between pickling and unpickling? And anybody know? Yeah, okay. So it's in computer science, pickling is a term used like encapsulating data in like a virtual pickle jar, if you will, and then unpickling it is pulling the data out later when it's been converted. So the point is, that is a question that was easy to look up on Google, right? Or ask ChatGPT to give you a perfectly written answer. So what I've done is I've taken questions like that and rewritten them. Instead of saying, what's the difference between pickling and unpickling? You could say, did you use pickling in any of your projects this semester? And what do you prefer, pickling or unpickling? All right, so that's two questions, but the key is you link it, and this is similar to what Rosie's describing, link it to personal things, student, the work they're doing in the course, and to the current semester. I realize this is harder to do, depends on what you're teaching and what types of questions. But I will say anecdotally, this has significantly dropped the number of incidents I've had or suspected, uses. The last thing I was going to say, it does what Leslie's talking about, which is it personalizes the question, student-centered, and we're encouraging their voice, right? We're asking them about themselves. I think that's the bottom line. It's at this point, could they still use ChatGPT? Probably. But it's easier just to answer the question about yourself. And I think that's a way of deterring it until they come out with ChatGPT 5. Yeah, so I just wanted to add that. Good.
Okay. All right, so like many of my colleagues, I think, I teach biology, and there's a lot of terminology. There's a lot of opportunities for students to just look at the answer and not really learn the words. And I have the fortune of teaching about the human body, and so it's really easy to draw on students' lived experiences. Because everybody wants to talk about, that time that they got poison oak and it was like in their eyes and their conjunctiva were inflamed, right? So it's actually, I'm lucky in that I can really draw on the lived experiences of my students. They want to share it. So that part's easy for me. But it's the reliance on using AI tools for doing the research and the kind of heavy lifting in my class that I want students to learn how to use it responsibly. I'm not going to try to stop them. And I have a link in this slide deck to my liquid syllabus that has my academic integrity policy with an AI policy in it. But I just included a couple of excerpts from there, and I'm sure you've already read it, so I'm not going to bore you with it. But my class is, for many students, one of the first classes that they take when they come to college, because they're allied health majors. They're not going to be taking an AA or an AS. Many of them are getting a certificate. They don't take an English class. They don't take a math class. They're not doing the GE pathway. It's very specific. So my class is a science course that is required for students who are going to be caring for our ill in hospitals and doctors' offices. And we want them to, have that sense of when it's appropriate to ask AI for something and when they need to just really think for themselves. But also, they're not academics. Many of them do not want to be in a biology class because they just want to care for people. So, so I have to kind of like prepare them for how to study biology, and they don't really know how to do that. So, one of the things that I do early on in the semester is, and actually I have a series of them. I have journaling assignments that are they're metacognitive assignments. And Rosie mentioned the importance of metacognition in the learning process and having students reflect on their learning. So this assignment that I give them has some of that reflection, but it also is a teaching opportunity to show students how they can use a chat AI tool to study and to understand perhaps some of the concepts that they may not have grasped. And so the particular assignment that I'll show you, I'll go through the basics here, is that I give them a canned prompt. It's already generated, I've already made the prompt for them, and I give it to them, and the prompt is based on one of the learning outcomes for the class. And so it's something that students often don't think about because it's so drilled into all of the terminology and the physiological processes of, like, you know, like how skin is produced, that they miss the connections about what is the actual role of the skin and how does it work with the other parts of your other organ systems to regulate something like body temperature. So then after they enter the prompts with, you know, ChatGPT or Copilot, I encourage Copilot for reasons that I mentioned before, that it's free and it gives them pretty high quality results. I ask them to identify 2 new concepts or ideas that they learned from the prompt, from the chat output, and then also to identify errors or issues that they had with the result. And the issues could be, I really wish it would have explained this, which is good, right? Because that means they're critically evaluating. Or it could be, I think this is wrong. I'm also okay with that, even though usually it's not wrong, because it's a learning opportunity, right? And then I ask them to reflect on their actual process, because many of my students claim to not have done this before, claim to have not be unfamiliar with using ChatGPT or whatever. This may change this year, it could be different, but last year, many of my students were like, you know, I've never done this before. I don't even know how to like ask, you know, I don't know how to use this tool. It's like, well, watch my video. It's pretty self-explanatory. So I asked them, is this at the right level? Like, could a biology student in your class have written this? And most of them are like, totally, like, I could have done that, no problem. It's like, okay, well, let's think more about this. Like, is that the way you would have written it? Okay. And then I asked them to think about how they could use these tools in their own lives. Like, now that you've tried this out, you've never done this before, or maybe you have, how do you or how could you use these tools in your own life to increase your productivity for learning purposes? And so a lot of them were like, wow, I never even thought about using AI as a tutor. I never thought about asking it a question from your study guide and seeing what the answer is, and then going back and looking at my videos on that and being like, oh yeah, okay, now I get it. Because this assignment brings up a lot of aha moments for my students in terms of, whoa, I can really leverage this to help me learn. And whoa, I hadn't thought about that biology concept that way before. I'm so glad that now I know more about this. Okay, and then finally, I asked them about their concerns. And many students are like, you know, I have a real problem with other students using this tool to complete assignments. And I wouldn't trust my coworkers if they use this when interacting with patients. So it's kind of cool that they're, you know, for the most part, they don't trust that it can take the place of a person, of a human, doing the real care and the real learning, which I was encouraged by. Okay, so this assignment is on Canvas Commons, and there's a link to the Commons link there, but I also just hopefully this works. Oh, it works, okay. So I have a development shell and Canvas, which you can get those if you want to, where you can play around. It's like a sandbox. And I just made it public so that I could show this to you without having to log into Canvas. So it won't be public for very long. Anyway, so I'm just showing this to you as like, I know, there's my funny face. So I have, for my assignment, I have a video introduction, which includes my rationale and kind of introduces the assignment. And then I have a step-by-step how to, open up a chat, ask the co-pilot the question below, and there's my prompt right there. So answer the following question as if you were a student in an introductory biology, introductory anatomy and physiology course. You have just finished studying the integumentary, skeletal, muscular, and nervous systems. Draw, I can't read that if they're too small. Draw on what you have learned over the past 4 weeks, right? The different parts. Answer the following question. Describe the pathway of information and the parts of the blah, blah, blah involved in a homeostatic mechanism such as thermoregulation. If I had asked the students that question, they would have been like, right? They would not have been able, despite having studied all 4 of those organ systems, they would really struggle with that if that was an exam question. Even though I like to think that I do a pretty good job. But the synthesis part, taking 4 different organ systems and putting them together, that's hard, right? Especially when you're in your first semester of college. So they ask the chat bot, they ask ChatGPT or Copilot or, whatever Poe, whatever their preference is, and they get an answer, and then I ask them, then they do the evaluation part. And so I know this is kind of small, so let me see if I can make Chrome make it bigger. Anyway, and so here's the evaluation things, and I already talked about, I talked about what those questions are basically set up, and then I have them, submit the assignment. And I also, just as a, a universal design plug, I give students the option for how they submit the assignment, right? So multiple modes of expression. I let them film a video, stream of consciousness, just talk to me about how this went, or they can submit an audio recording, or they can submit an infographic, an image, whatever it is that they want to submit, or text. So it's totally up to them. And I do this with a lot of my assignments. So anyway, that is what I do. Later on in the semester, so this is a scaffolding assignment, or this is part of a scaffolding, because later on in the semester, they spend 8 weeks collaborating with a group of peers on a group project in an online class. The headache. But they do love it at the end. They hate me first. But part of the work that they do is I ask, part of their deliverables is they do some research, and I ask them to use, so they can use the library databases, they can use the web, or they can use something like Perplexity, and they can, or even Copilot provide citations if you ask it. And so I ask them to conduct research using AI to give them ideas for their group project. So they've already been introduced to the tools and then they use it again later. And I even give them permission to use AI to generate their final presentations for them, so long as the actual meat inside of the presentation includes content that they previously turned in on a formative assignment. They have to draw it and weave it all in together. But they're so proud of the result because AI makes really polished presentations, and they're not afraid to share them because they look cool. Okay, I'm done now. Thank you. We have a question.
Yeah, there was one question on Zoom about your activity. Do students ever copy and paste evaluate the AI response questions into Copilot? So when you have them go through and generate AI and then evaluate it, do they ever?
They might, but I haven't really seen that because most of the sentences, there's no good grammar. It's bad grammar. There's no punctuation. It's all lowercase. It's kind of stream of consciousness stuff. So I'd be, I mean, I'm sure they could do that if they do, but they actually don't, surprisingly. Most of them answer it in their voices and their written voices, which, as I mentioned before, this is their first semester in college usually, so it's very obvious.
Jenna, one of the, especially in the area that you're discussing, one of the big words that's being thrown around AI is guardrails. And specifically, to which extent we need to be cognizant of the results that AIs present to us and how that might affect us, our environment, and to wherever we might send the results. Do you discuss any of those guardrails? Do you set any of them for your students? Do you have the students set them for themselves? Or are there perhaps, especially since we're talking healthcare, any outside bodies that may have already defined certain considerations for such things?
So this is something I'm hoping to do actually in my class this semester, and this year. It's a work in progress. But one of the elements of our group project is to look at how institutional racism and research practices affect the outcomes of certain groups in healthcare outcomes, and their also susceptibility to disease, likelihood to develop diseases, and inability to obtain treatment. And so what I have not done yet with the assignment that I'm hoping to do is ask students to look for the bias in the journal articles that they find. There's been a lot of work done in the last year, thankfully, about changing some of the diagnostic criteria. For example, kidney function is used, there's an equation that is used, and built into that equation is racial bias, with the assumption that that people of African descent have better functioning kidneys than Caucasians, and that when their GFR levels are lower, they still fall within the healthy range and are less likely to be eligible for dialysis or kidney transplants. Which obviously dramatically affects the outcomes of kidney disease. And when you add in type 2 diabetes to that, it really becomes quite appalling. So anyway, there's been a lot of work done just recently, and it wouldn't be on chat yet, about eliminating the racial bias from that calculation. And so I'm hoping that I can find more examples of that and ask my students to evaluate the sort of hidden biases in the AI outputs when they ask the same questions that I'm asking them to think that. As far as like other guardrails go, I ask my students to establish those, where is it appropriate for you to use this? And I remind them, when they have certain assignments, I want to hear what you have to say about it. I want your thoughts. I want your personal experiences on this. And so I try not to have, especially writing assignments, where students can just look up the answer, which I think helps set some of those guardrails a bit. Does that answer your question at all?
It does. Thank you.
Anybody else have a hand up? I just wanted to add that I feel like we have this tremendous opportunity with AI to differentiate between what machines do best and what people can do, but more specifically, this sort of gets at the heart of like what we're doing as educators, but what is it that we want students to be practicing and learning to do? And as a writing instructor, I was cheering when Leslie was referring to the possibility that some of those truly turgid, I love the word turgid.
It's a biology word.
Some of those truly horrific, turgid elements of the kind of classic traditional scholarly voice, which are knock, knock, no one's home, right? Like that's the ideal, is that they should be totally impersonal, pseudo-objective, it's all mirage. And so what I think this should make clear for us, and probably is clear for students, is look, machines can produce that kind of writing. Why do students need to be able to do it? Is it really helping them learn to ask them to write in this impersonal scholarly voice? So having more assignments where, just throwing out the window this idea that students should never use first person in their writing, the kind of stuff that they get taught in high school. You're never going to be able to use first person in college. And I just wonder if it's a great opportunity. I think it's a great opportunity for even those fields that might think of where professors think of themselves as needing to teach students the, you know, the discursive conventions for scholarly writing. Okay, but do you really have to ask students to reproduce them? Or could you ask them to write in a much more authentic, for them, authentic voice? And I love seeing, Jenna, your, like just the various ways that students can submit their work. It doesn't all have to be, and I think that that's so likely to bring out their natural enthusiasm. Because the natural enthusiasm, it's there, it gets killed off by the fear of not being good enough, scholarly enough, etc. But the vast majority of students, if they're encouraged, they'll do the work if they feel they're capable of doing what we want them to do. And if we can cheer them on to be themselves while they're learning, like they come to life. And they don't, you know, act like they're a machine. That's my sense anyway.
I want to just briefly follow up on that. I know that the multiple modes of expression and options for submitting stuff doesn't really fall into this symposium. But I do want to say that my students have, when I ask them at the end of the semester, you know, like what were some of the best, what were your favorite assignments, and you know, what were the best things about learning, and they say, I really appreciated that I could submit my assignment, you know, in video format, or that I could just talk into my phone without having to type anything. Because many of our students are taking our classes, at least my classes online, using their phones. And so writing a submission is challenging, and then they're going to use speech to text, and you know, like, what's the point? So anyway, we really do appreciate that, and sometimes the students in the recordings, they go on because they're really jazzed about being able to talk about it. In an online class, it's asynchronous, you don't get to do a lot of that. So anyway.
As we kind of wrap things up today, I want to just make sure folks know where they can get the resources that we've talked about today. The AI research guide that Rochelle began and that we've been building on is available on the library website. It is will be shared out after today. The AI Learning Institute link at the very bottom has a link to the slides. So we had a lot of content knowledge and links that were referred to in the presentation today, so you could peruse those with a little bit more leisure. The PD department also puts the slides and the recording up on the website after we wrap up this week. I want to say thanks, and I'll give Rochelle a second too. I just want to say thanks to Claudia and Sabrina and Tanika specifically for the thank you. And I just want to thank Rochelle for organizing our group. She did all the legwork Holly, thank you.
So I guess this is the end of our party, yeah, but there's some blood over there. So, so I would like to thank everybody, people who are here. As I was told, there were 65 people online. Wow. So just imagine how many we are here in addition to that, so it's great. So our link, what I said, our link to the slide deck will be available on the P also. And just an announcement too, that the library will conduct series of workshops for our students. So this is going to be students, so we have the faculty like this, and at the same time, we need the students to have the kind of skill today, like skill that we all are learning here at the same time. And so, and that's starting in October, so watch out for that. So I hope you all learned something, even one thing out of this one. And just like our hope here is that you play with one AI tool or something.
Well, one total read, one failed. It's called, and then hide outliers.
Speaking of my colleague, Eric.
Oh, wow, he's got one right there.
do basis.
Okay,
So it's read one of the sequences, and that sequence is 600.
and it looks good.
Okay, so that's our session. You have a good day and thank you very much.
So if you can say you do.
All right, so, thank you. All right, so just a few words before you log off, maybe those online and those here in person. I, again, want a lot of thank yous go around, but it really is needed. It's a lot of hard work and also nerve-wracking to stand in front of your colleagues and talk about a topic that is so broad and so varied. So thank you all so much for being willing to do this work. It was a lot. Also, this work is, we've heard, it's not done. And so after this session, if you have questions or you want to talk about something, please contact the folks who are presenting, talk to your departments, talk to your colleagues. Like, we really need to lead with curiosity in this space. There's so much that is out there for us to learn. We need really all hands on deck. From the PD hacks, like offerings are happening tomorrow. Starting in the morning, we have coffee with the presidents if you would like to join us. And then we have a full day filled with learning opportunities. We've tried something different this year, and we're having like focus areas. So you might see on the website where it'll say like a teaching and learning focus or teaching support, and I think it says student support. So we're just trying something a little different so you have an idea going into the session where the focus is. It's for everyone to attend, right? It doesn't mean if it says a teaching focus that if you're not instructional faculty, you don't go, and vice versa, but instead it kind of gives us a little bit more of an idea. Convocation on Friday is going to be really excellent. We get a chance to focus on our Anapi brothers, sisters, and siblings on campus, so please be excited and come and leading with curiosity in that space. And also I just wanted to share that we have our TLLs are working very hard again this year to work with us to make sure that we are thinking about course success data. We're leading with curiosity in that space that also informs the work that we're doing with AI. Are things working? Are they not working? We also are going to, the last thing is there's a code on these boards, and that will give you some information about what's happening this week if you'd like to have that on your phone. And then last piece, we do have food in the bag, and that's brought to us by our union. And so we're gonna have our union president to say a few words, and our Senate president. Someone's gonna say a few words other than me. So if you RSVP for the lunch today and for the conversation that's going to occur, and so here's a few words about this next portion. But those of you who are moving on, thank you so much for being here. Thank you.